Tonight, a marathon meeting of Portland City Council. This is a live picture from inside the council chambers at City Hall, where the council is listening to testimony on a daytime camping ban proposed by Mayor Ted Wheeler. If it passes, it would ban camping in public areas from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. in Portland. The council has 6 hours of testimony scheduled. 170 people have signed up to say something, and they are going to be there all night long. I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to the story. We're going to give you some extra time tonight. The City Council action today on both that camping ban and an earlier lawsuit settlement that will get more tents off the sidewalks. Those two decisions raise the potential for the most action on homelessness in our area in a long time. And that makes them our big story tonight. Earlier today, the City Council voted to accept a settlement agreement in a lawsuit that pitted people with disabilities against homeless campers. The suit argued that the City of Portland violated the Americans with Disabilities Act. The suit claimed that by allowing people to camp on the sidewalks and in right-of-ways, the city was not allowing people with disabilities to use those, and that is against the law. The settlement has wide-reaching implications when it comes to how the city will deal with the camps now. It stipulates that the city will have to prioritize cleaning up camps that block sidewalks. There's also a time limit. The city has 5 days to do something about camps reported to be blocking the sidewalk. It also has to clear at least 500 campsites each year that are blocking, and that has to continue until they're gone. The city will also not be allowed to distribute tents or tarps except in severe weather. And the whole thing has to be enforced by a federal court. The city will have to make quarterly progress reports to the court. The council voted unanimously to accept the settlement. Mayor Ted Wheeler said he's actually glad he was sued.
It's very common for me to get sued in my role as the mayor of this city, and I don't always welcome being sued. This is a notable exception. And I had the opportunity to meet with some of the plaintiffs in court, and I said then what I will say now, which is I agree with you. I agree with the reasons that the lawsuit was filed. I agree that people should have rights to access our sidewalks without impediment, regardless of whether they have disabilities or not. I believe this is something that all people in this community should enjoy, but the ADA is very explicit about the rights of people with disabilities, and I believe those rights were impinged by the large number of obstructions on our sidewalks.
So there. The mayor says he did not work to remove more camps in the past few years because he says he was following COVID guidance and that the city did not have enough shelter beds. The other big part of this still underway right now. The city council is deciding whether to approve the mayor's ban on homeless camping from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Sunday, I guess, 7 days a week. It also creates a complete ban on all camping in public property, and that includes parks and sidewalks, near schools and daycares, and in high crash corridors. Members of the public are expected to give testimony on both sides, for and against the ban. One of those who supports it is Jonathan Maslin. He's a board member of the Central East Side Industrial Council. He also helps small businesses on Portland's east side.
In a district struggling to recover following the pandemic, navigating around tents, trash, human excrement, and drug paraphernalia is simply too intimidating and traumatic for many workers and customers to feel safe returning. Something needs to change. I believe our community's intentions have been in the right place by prioritizing compassion for those who find themselves on our street. However, I also believe that our community has been taken advantage of by a significant number of people that do not want shelter, treatment, or the like, and merely want to live consequence-free on our streets.
It does appear likely the new ban is going to pass. By the way, during that hearing, staff noted that Beaverton and Tigard are considering similar bans, and Lake Oswego already has a camping ban that even goes farther than Portland's. So, if it's going to happen, frontline service providers like the Blanchet House expect to be overwhelmed. Their executive director, Scott Kerman, also testified at the City Council today.
I'm here to request financial assistance for Blanchet House and other agencies who provide these essential daytime services. If we are going to meet the increased need for our help that this ordinance will cause, we are going to need your support. Blanchet House's Founders Cafe, which each of you have visited, is a community space where people not only receive hot, freshly prepared meals, but also clothing, peer support resources, and referrals.
Mayor Wheeler said he does support Kerman and will do all he can to help. All right, now let's bring in our homeless expert, reporter Blair Best, who's covered this all day. Blair, what's it like inside City Hall now with all this going on?
So, Pat, it has been an incredibly heated day here at City Hall, to say the least. I just learned that the city actually has increased security working tonight, given the number of people testifying and the nature of their testimony. There's been a lot of screaming, heckling, and cheering. You know, a lot of people showed up to protest this proposed daytime ban on camping. They showed up around 2 today and proceeded to chant their way into council chamber. Mayor Wheeler also issued some warnings saying if they don't remain civil, then this meeting would go virtual. And I want to point out that the main thing they're concerned with is the enforcement of this ban, right? So if a homeless person violates the ban 3 times, then they could face fines or prison time. And Pat, that doesn't rub many of the Portlanders that showed up today the right way.
Well, I can see how it would get their attention. I was listening in on some of the testimony, and I think that it's up to 100 days in jail, but they also said that that would really be just a device to get somebody to get into drug treatment or something like that. What are some of your takeaways on this?
Yeah, so I see it from both sides, right? And I think that's because of the nature of what we do. I talk with business owners who say this homeless crisis is the reason they've had to shut down or relocate. I also talk with homeless people who say they can't get access to services. They're on a years-long wait list for housing. They struggle with an addiction. They can't access a detox bed because of our lack of services. And so the thought of them, you know, having to pick up their things every day at 8 a.m. and relocate, many don't feel safe in a shelter, is baffling to them. And some people see this ban as the only way to move the city forward, and then some see it as inhumane.
All right, thank you, Blair. It'll be interesting to see how this is enforced. Moving on now. An advocacy group, People for Portland, is out with a poll showing that 71% of likely voters in Multnomah County support Mayor Wheeler's camping ban. The group paid for a poll by GS Strategy Group, which is based in Idaho. It polled 500 likely voters, and the margin of error is plus or minus 4%. Some of the results include this one. 75% agreed that homelessness in the Portland area is an out-of-control disaster. 17% said it's not great, and 6% feel, yeah, it's kind of turned the corner. It's making some progress. 67% say for people in crisis, drug addiction and mental health treatment should no longer be voluntary. 25% said that help should remain voluntary. Dan Levy is a Republican consultant and one of the 2 founders of People for Portland. He said the poll results show most people have had enough.
Well, I think it shows the level of frustration people have, that they know our homeless crisis now goes far deeper than homelessness. It gets on addiction and mental health. And people are no longer willing to just say it's a voluntary, they're expecting behavior change. In exchange for a government help, housing, treatment, they want personal responsibility. They want people to change their behavior. They're willing to help them do it.
The poll also found 55% of those responding feel that Portland has lost its way. 40% said it's still a special place to live. And 65% believe elected officials are listening only to a small group of political activists and not to a majority of citizens. Other findings include, here on the left side of the page, 47% would vote to repeal that 10-year tax on high-income earners and businesses that's expected to provide about $2.5 billion for homeless programs. 41% said keep it. And on the right side of the screen, 67% agreed that Multnomah County does not have a homeless plan and is wasting money. Now, that last result came from a bit of a push question. People were told the county has spent nearly $1 billion over the past several years on homelessness, but still has no plan and no way to measure their progress. And then they were asked, do you think the county has a plan? It's true that County Commissioner Sharon Myron said that statement. In fact, we ran 2 lengthy interview clips with her right here on our show about that very topic, and she said that more than once. But stating that and then asking people if they think the county is wasting money, it's kind of pushing them to answer the way that you want. That's why it's called a push question. Still, the overall thrust of the poll is that the homeless crisis is out of control and elected leaders are not doing nearly enough to fix it. Kevin Looper is a Democratic political consultant and co-founder of People for Portland. He says the numbers show the public is fed up and political leaders are out of touch with voters. He points to this response where 51% say a top priority to address homelessness should be creating more drug addiction and mental health services for the homeless. 34% said the priority should be building more permanent housing for the homeless.
And we're being ruled by a small number of people who are very ideologically driven. And that question about should we be doing services for people in addition to housing or just housing gets to the heart of the ideological problem. There's a group of people who believe that housing first is the only mantra, and they won't fund mental health, they won't fund drug addiction. And everybody practically involved with trying to fix homelessness knows that it turns out someone who has a mental health problem or a severe addiction isn't going to make good choices. And maybe we might need to use the legal system to interdict their behavior and get them on a better path.
I find his comments really interesting because he's the Democratic political consultant. So what do you think about all that? Do you support the camping ban? Why? Are you against it? Why? Send me your thoughts, will you? And become part of the conversation. The email is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. Our phone number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Coming up, another day and no work at the Capitol. Governor Tina Kotek says she can't do anything anymore to get the Republicans to come back. Using the state police, well, that's still an option according to the Senate president, but it's still on the table.
I think it has to be. You know, if you just look at the Constitution, it really is about people showing up to do their constitutional duty, and that is voting on bills. It's not walking off the job.
The very latest on the stalemate in Salem when the story returns. Well, things are not going well in Salem these days, at least not when it comes to ending the Senate walkout. Governor Kotek today announced that she is at an impasse with Republicans there. Her statement said she met 5 times with the Senate leader, Tim Knopp. Governor Kotek said she offered to address issues raised by the Republicans and to bring back to life and pass a number of their bills which were killed earlier. And she said nothing worked because Knope would not agree to end the walkout unless House Bill 2002 is killed or substantially amended. That's the bill that requires insurance companies to cover gender-affirming care and allows girls 14 and younger to get an abortion without parental permission. For his part, Knope said the governor was focused only on the status quo, an agenda that is uncompromising and unconstitutional. Before today's announcement last Thursday, I interviewed Senate President Rob Wagner. We're going to run some extensive clips from him over the last, we have actually over the last 2 nights. And if you missed it, check it out on our KGW YouTube or our KGW Plus app for Roku. We're also going to hear from him tonight as well. So, as part of our show last night, we asked for your feedback, and of course, you never disappoint. Heidi spoke for many who responded, writing, "The Democratic leader seems like a very reasonable man. I agree that in a democracy, the majority rules, and the Republicans are only there and being paid to do the work, not to walk out and leave bills not voted on."
Why don't we do what millions of Americans do? Work for a living. If we don't work, we don't get paid. I'm sure they're not in there just for politics alone.
Well, I mean, they might be, but, well, who knows? That was Bob, by the way, who said he's 86 years old and a Republican. And on the other side, Tom, who says he's a Democrat and is taking Senate Democrats to task. He writes in, "I do not think the Democrats are negotiating in good faith. They, the Dems, believe in acceptance and meeting people where they are. The Republicans have a different set of views which do not align with the Democratic views, so they are shutting them down." And we'll end this part of the comment from Russ, who wants both sides to put House Bill 2002 up for a vote of the people and get on with the work of the session.
They're obviously not going to come back as long as this is sitting there. That's fine. Pull it off the table, put it to us, the people, to vote on it, and let's continue on.
Thank you, Russ, and thanks to each of you who wrote in and called. We really do read all your emails and we listen to all your voicemails. You're an important part of our show. Thanks for informing us on issues like this. And for his part, Senate President Rob Wagner today demanded the Republicans return to the session so that everybody can continue. So I guess now it's, actually, it didn't change anything. Which brings us to our final comments from an interview I did with him last week. We talked about his optimism that Republicans will return and the question of using the state police if they do not. Are you worried that there'll be no resolution?
I wouldn't say worried. I think that people are going to come back. I really do.
Really?
And so maybe we'll have this conversation in another few weeks.
That'd be great to celebrate that.
Yeah. So, but I'm, like I said, I'm excited to be here every day doing the work.
What's it going to take, though, to have the Republicans come back? They're just going to wake up one morning and say, you know what, Rob's a great guy. Let's go in there and vote.
Well, hopefully it's not driven around me being a great guy. I've got 4 kids. 2 of them are still teenagers. So that might be, you might, depending on the time of day, you might get a different answer on that. I do think that, again, it's not about personality. It really is about substance and issue.
Okay, but they're not going to wake up and say one day.
I can't get inside their heads on what's making them tick. I do know that the door is open and I'm interested in having conversations with them about issues that impact them.
Okay, but then what makes you optimistic that it will happen, though?
I mean, I think we've seen, other instances in the past. Just look at the House. The House is a great example. They stayed. The Republicans there stayed. They had robust debate. They had disagreement, but they stayed. They didn't walk off the job. So I think that there are enough people that are committed to our democracy that are going to want to come back and hopefully give us the opportunity to vote on those bills.
So it's my understanding that some of the Republicans are still sort of bouncing around the building, doing committee meetings and things like that. Why not send the, what is that term? Sergeant at Arms.
Oh, yeah. Well,
or the state police.
So we do every day actually have what's called a call of the Senate. Yep. Senator Lieber makes a motion, and then they say bar the doors, and then the Sergeant at Arms goes around the building looking for folks. But at this point, this early in session, there wasn't conversation about trying to do kind of escalate this. I think it was really about there are Republicans that have really important things to say about bills and budgets, and we wanted to provide them that opportunity. At the same time, I think that it'll be interesting to see over the next few weeks how those conversations materialize.
Yeah, because I think you said last week, I'm not promising anymore that we won't do this, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I'm saying at this time, I haven't engaged in real conversation about what does that mean to engage like the state police yet or something like that.
But it's still on the table.
I think it has to be. If you just look at the Constitution, it really is about people showing up to do their constitutional duty, and that is voting on bills. It's not walking off the job. And I think we've seen too much of that. I think Oregonians are tired of it.
Tired or not, it goes on, and it continued again today. Meanwhile, hundreds of bills remain in limbo, among them several high-priority environmental pieces of legislation aimed at making Oregon's buildings more resilient to climate change. But unlike other bills, letting these bills die could mean our state misses out on hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding. Environmental reporter Cale Williams explains.
So there is what I can describe as a tsunami of federal money coming our way. We want to make sure that Oregon families and communities have access to that we really get our fair share.
That's Pam Marsh, a Democratic representative from Jackson County. And the tsunami of money she's talking about, it comes from the Inflation Reduction Act. That bill set aside $369 billion, specifically earmarked for climate action by states. The package in the Oregon legislature, which is focused on building resilience, was specifically crafted to tap into those funds. It would create incentives and rebates for heat pumps. It would change building codes to increase efficiency, and it would create a navigation system to help Oregonians make the most of all the state and federal rebates and tax credits available to them as they upgrade their homes. If the package of bills passed, it would do all those things. But it had another, arguably more important function.
The bills are frankly less about Oregon investing in the devices themselves or the upgrades themselves, and more about setting up a really smart strategic infrastructure so that we can take best advantage of that federal money.
The package is a product of a 27-member task force that met throughout last year. Meredith Connolly, Oregon director of the advocacy group Climate Solutions, was on that task force. She said she heard from residents all over the state who are asking for help to make their homes better equipped for our changing climate.
It could bring in hundreds of millions of dollars of federal funding to actually do this at scale in Oregon. Just to see that all potentially thrown by the wayside.
Absent.
The price tag for the package of bills was roughly $20 million, which would have come from the general fund. But an analysis by Climate Solutions found that if the state fails to pass the bills, it could miss out on a minimum of $250 million in direct federal funding for heat pumps, efficiency upgrades, and workforce training.
These aren't limitless pots of money from the federal government, and if other states have acted and they've expended those dollars and doled them out, Oregon could miss its chance.
And that's just for this one package of bills. There are many other bills focused on toxic chemicals in children's products, drought relief, and natural climate solutions that had bipartisan support but could fall victim to the walkout.
These are complicated issues, and people are working really hard around the clock to make sure that we have good solutions, and to have a handful of people prevent that progress it's devastating.
Now, a spokesperson for Republican lawmakers hasn't responded to our questions. But assuming they don't come back to the Capitol, Marsh did raise the idea of including these bills in a larger budget bill if the governor calls for a special session later this summer. For Connolly, though, the idea of another political season passing with no movement on environmental issues isn't something she wants to contemplate.
The outcome can't be that we didn't act on climate. That's just unacceptable. We can't take a year off.
Cale Williams, KGW News.
Thanks, Kyle. Still ahead, the National Crisis Helpline 988 launched just under a year ago. One man in Washington says it's responsible for saving his life.
He just kept saying, please don't do it, please don't do it, please don't do it.
How he says the counselors were there for him when he was going through a dark time. Mental Health Awareness Month is wrapping up this week. One new resource is the simplified 988 crisis line number that launched last summer. It's a nationwide number and it's free. You can call it if you or someone you know is considering suicide. King 5's Maddie White has one Northwest caller's story. A warning, this story does mention suicidal thoughts, so please watch with care.
Please don't do it.
Danny Jablonski was alone with his thoughts this spring.
All I saw was darkness.
Recalling how his estranged mother never agreed with his lifestyle.
It's all up here.
So when she died, he was suddenly overcome with feelings of
shame, guilt, everything started to flow forth.
A mental health crisis ensued.
I had separated from my job. I had quit school.
And while Googling suicide, he saw an ad for a phone number he recognized, 988.
I had heard about it on television.
So the 58-year-old reached out using their chat function.
I was talking to them like literally almost every morning. They kept diverting me. They literally were my best friends because I was so lonely at the time.
But a plan eventually materialized.
He just kept saying, please don't do it, please don't do it, please don't do it. And I hit in chat and drove down here, pulled the car here. I saw the southbound train coming. Thought about what the guy from 988 said, Danny, don't do it. And I just turned the key on, backed the car up, and I guess it's not gonna be today.
Now he says he has a new job.
I have a totally new direction in my life.
And a new outlook on life.
So much has changed just 1 month.
One local call center says there are a growing number of people accessing the lifeline.
When we converted over to 988 last July, we immediately saw an increase in calls by about 49%.
So they're looking to hire and retain more trained crisis counselors.
But to be honest, it's a high burnout field. We're looking for more workforce.
A workforce that does important work.
988 saved my life.
Wow, that is powerful. Again, if you or someone you know needs help, we want to put that number up again for you. All you have to do is dial 988 on any phone, day or night. It'll connect you to a crisis center and a trained counselor. And if you're interested in becoming one of those counselors, you can go to 988lifeline.org to find out how to apply. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. I'm going to be off for a few days, by the way, but you'll be in good hands with our hard-working team here, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, remember, our story, that never ends. Now, stick around for the 6:30 news. It's coming up next.